We haven't had this segment for a while, but it's time to release, relax, and relate with Michele de La Coudray-Blake. It rhymes. Michele is the director of the counseling department in St. Kitts. Michele is here to talk to us about breaking the stereotypes surrounding counseling. Good morning, Michele, and welcome to
Good morning, Hortensia and Jamie. Thank you for having me here this morning.
You are
thank you for being here.
certainly welcome.
Yes. Okay.
So we'll dive into the meat of things. So what do you believe are some of the main stereotypes surrounding counseling?
So when people talk about counseling, there's always a couple of things that make it difficult for people. The sense that people look at them in a particular way and think of them in a particular way, namely that they're weak because they're not able to deal with their issues on their own, and the confidentiality. So that the first one about people looking at them in a particular way brings shame, brings feelings of guilt because I'm not strong enough to be able to deal with a situation on my own. I'm not strong enough to be able to solve a problem on my own. And sometimes that message is reinforced by what we hear around. So it's a reinforcing message that people have. And the other one about confidentiality. We live in a small society, and you hear that all the time. I don't want people to know my business because if people know my business, then, you know. So the notion that when you sit with a counselor that you're giving, that's why you're in counseling. So you're giving a story, and the notion that that story is going to be shared is something that people stereotype when they think of counseling. So, you know, those two things basically.
I want to bring a little bit of the discussion back to gender when it comes to what you said about being weak in counseling. Do you find that that is something that you've had to fight against when it comes to men and how they perceive counseling?
Yes. Yes. Yes, because again, we go back to stereotypes, and we all carry messages that are given to us in society. We carry them, that's a given. All right? And the messages that are given to men are several and are varied, but the messages are: you need to be able to man up and do this. You need to be able to fix it. Men are typically fixers, and they tend to want to make something better. So that aspect of processing through feelings and things and what's going on with you and making sense of it, men tend to want to fix. And so the first instinct is to try and fix things yourself. And so men, when you see men come into counseling, is usually because they have gotten to a point of crisis. I've tried and tried and tried, and I can't do it anymore, so I come in crisis. And of course, crisis is usually not the best time to be able to try and address something, because it's a whole other dynamic, it's a whole other thing going on. So, but yeah, men definitely wait longer. Women will come in for what we call every little thing. Every little thing, yes. And I don't want to minimize that. I'm just saying it to say that they address things. Yes.
They speak up.
I have to say, when you spoke just now, I felt listened to and heard. You went, men are fixers. You hit the nail on the head.
Right, it spoke to you. Yes.
Definitely did.
Men are fixers. Men are fixers.
So how can we break these stereotypes when it comes to counseling?
Yeah, I think breaking any stereotype, we have to recognize that there's time involved. It takes time, because breaking a stereotype isn't, it's multifaceted, because you have to break, the experiences that people have to be different. The messages in society have to be different. Education has to be different. So breaking the stereotypes involves information giving. So here we are sitting today. This is an aspect of information giving and information sharing. We do that a lot. We share information about different aspects of mental health and counseling. So sharing, information giving. So information giving makes people recognize, one, that it's perfectly normal and fine to be able to seek mental health. That mental health doesn't mean that something is wrong with how you experience the world, how you see the world. So giving information. The second thing is, or another thing is, it's important for when people do put themselves out there, that the response that they get back is in line with what counselors say will happen. So when they say confidentiality, what you're supposed to feel is that you are kept, your business is kept confidential.
Kept confidential.
Your issues are kept confidential. It should not be that you hear something somewhere or you know, even to the point, we're talking about confidentiality, even to the point, as a counselor, if you are one of my clients, I'd be in the supermarket and I'd pass you straight by. Because if you want to say hello, I'd say hello back to you. But I should not in any way have any sort of, or give any kind of indication that would make you uncomfortable in a space.
Get you.
Right? So information giving, just making sure there's congruence between what we say and what you experience. And people do have to trust the system. So people have to do their own research. Speak to people. Sorry, do research on what counseling can do and try. You know, so there must be some trust on the individual's part. Yeah.
All right, a burning question for me, apart from getting into, definitely burning question, apart from getting into what the National Counseling Department actually does and how your services can be accessed, I do want to know if during the pandemic that provided some difficulty for you in terms of reaching your clientele.
So I'm going to speak generally and I'm going to speak personally. In the pandemic, we all had to change. We all had to adjust. We had to adjust platforms. We had to adjust how we interacted with people. And it had to shift to online platforms, virtual platforms, telephone. Now, that works for a lot of people, and it worked to be able to meet the needs at the time. So that's professionally, the fact that we were able to continue services. Counselors like the face-to-face. Counselors need the face-to-face. Because, and me, I particularly like the face-to-face because there's a lot that you read that gives information in a face-to-face dialogue that you miss virtually, that you can't get over the phone, that you can't get when we are, you know, in a virtual space. So I could pick up on whether or not you're tapping your feet. So I could pick up that there's a little anxiety. I could pick up if you're twiddling your thumbs. I could pick up if you're shifting a little bit. So there's a lot that is a part of the assessment that may not be so readily available and so readily obvious in the virtual world. So I personally don't prefer it. But you know, in the pandemic, we had to do what we had to do.
Okay, so I have to say, I couldn't think of better furniture to have this conversation with you or with than the sofa. Because I'm so relaxed talking to a counselor. It does something.
Yes.
It does.
And we're face-to-face as well. All right, so I want to talk to you now about accessing the services, because we're talking a lot about counseling, but if someone doesn't know where to go to access these services and what to expect once they do, what can you tell us?
Okay, so accessing services. You said something, you said, you know, if someone doesn't know where to go, you know, how do you? What we are finding is that people are knowing where to go. We are always overwhelmed with requests, with needs for services. So it says that's a good thing because we just started to talk about stigma. But what we're realizing is that the stigma is breaking.
Good stuff.
People are seeking services. So how do you seek services? So we're let me just correct the name, the National Counseling Center.
Thank you for that.
National Counseling Center. So people call or people, you know, come in and just give some basic intake. So the first thing that you do is you call. And our number is an easy one to remember, 465-5000. Easy to remember.
$5,000.
Yeah, you get a lot of calls from the office.
All right, so 465-5000. So the first thing to do is to call. We have a very pleasant, wonderful person who answers the phone, who walks you through the process. She tells you about, you know, what the services are. She asks about your need. There's some basic things she needs to ask to have just a basic intake, you know, sense of what is. So she asks about things like your need, and you could describe it in any way you could. And then when the counselors get the intake information, then we're able to perhaps just frame it a little bit more in a clinical sense.
Yeah.
And then of course when we sit with the person, we have a little bit more information, but she gets a basic sense. And then she gets information about your contact information, what's the best time to contact you for a callback, what's the best time for you to come in. Some people could say, look, I'm flexible, I could come in anytime. Some people say, well, I could use my lunch hour, because we are flexible. We're very flexible. I use my lunch hour. She gets a sense of that. She gets a sense of next of kin, just in case, who is in your corner for us to be able to touch base with, that you give us permission to touch base with. So that would be, why you share that information. So she'd get that information. And then she'd give them a little bit of a sense of when to get a call back. So she'd say to them, okay, so look, you're calling today, and sometimes you don't get a call back immediately because we have to make sure that we have the space and the availability to deal with a new client. So she gives them that. So when they finish with the call with her, they have a good sense of what is coming next, that expectation. And that in and of itself is helpful.
It is.
Yes.
So as I was telling Jimmy, when I was learning to swim, I always wondered what you did. I just thought you were a stay-at-home mom. So when I found out that you were a counselor, my question to you is, what in particular drew you to that field?
It was very accidental, for want of a better way of putting it. So a lot of times with the college process, when you go in, especially when you go into your first degree, there's some things that you have to take at first, called electives. So you have to go in and you have to take some things. So you go in with whatever direction, whatever sense you want to go, but they encourage you to take electives. Try out some other things. And so I got into college and got into some psychology electives. And the rest is history.
History.
Yeah,
So
here we are
that's
today.
yes. Just really loved it, just really felt connected to it. And this was a time in St. Kitts when we didn't have people going into that field, when the stigma was a lot more pronounced than it is now. I remember when I came back to work, I was the only one working in the field. And of course now we have long past that, which is an excellent thing for us in our societies. So, yeah. By accident.
By accident.
Yes.
I have one more burning question. How do you unpack everything that is like poured into you during your sessions at the end of your day?
That comes with time and maturity in the business and understanding. Because when you start off in mental health, you have this sense that my job is to fix everybody, to be there for everybody. As you learn and develop professionally and personally, you recognize that it is a partnership. I provide something, you have to provide something. My responsibility is not to fix you. My responsibility is to provide a platform that you could use to fix yourself. So the long and short of that is you learn to cut off. You learn, and it's not a selfish thing. You learn that my pouring everything into you is not helpful to you, and it's not helpful to me. So you really learn healthy boundaries. You learn how to recognize what assistance is. Assistance isn't always fixing you. Assistance could also just be providing a space for you to figure out if you want to fix things for yourself or not. That plus a very healthy decision on keeping my boundaries. So keeping times separate and apart. My times are my times. My work times are my work times. So that for me is important. Keeping friends and keeping experiences that I enjoy and fill me up. And making sure that there's no guilt associated with it not being able to fix things for people. So it comes with time. Yes.
Well, this has been a very engaging discussion.
I wish we had more time.
The 15 minutes goes by so quickly.
It does. But I can imagine what a session with you is like. And I have to say, we need to have Michele back because I love the couch effect.
All right. Okay.